everyone. My name is Evie Lupine. Welcome back to my channel, and today I have another video for you all. Today, we're going to talk about edge play. What is it exactly? That's right, we are back with another 101 style video. I know it has been a minute, so let's go ahead and just get right into it. So, edge play is a very tricky word when it comes to kink. Unlike a lot of the subjects I discuss on my channel, there is not a single clear-cut definition of what edge play is. So perhaps it is worth it to say what edge play is not first. When I say edge play, I am not referring to the use of knives in a consensual kink scene. That is called knife play. I am also not referring to the practice of edging, which I can't even fully describe on YouTube, so, yeah. It's when you repeatedly get very, very close, and then you back off, and then you repeat going back between those two states over and over again. No, it's not that. The kind of edge play I'm talking about is play that involves edgy kinks, as in stuff that pushes the boundaries of what is considered normal or acceptable, typically with a higher level of risk. But that's sort of the problem. Hearing it right now, you might think, well, but that makes perfect sense. What's so hard about that? You may have an idea in your head already about what kinks might fall under this umbrella term. But what counts as edgy is inherently subjective. What is edgy for one is another's average Friday night. It can even change for the same person over time or with different partners. When the average person enters the BDSM scene and makes a FetLife account, they are likely to notice that other users list out their kinks, hard limits, and soft limits. And invariably, a pattern occurs. Hard limits, no diapers. No water sports, no bodily fluids, and no scars. The same set of things are listed out over and over and over again, leaving the impression that everyone in the scene thinks roughly the same thing about this. Only extreme people would ever do something that left a scar or involved a knife or bodily fluid. You'd have to be out of your mind to consider something like punching or slapping someone. We're doing kink, not cage fighting here, people. So that leads a lot of folks to believe certain kinks are inherently edge play without really knowing more about them. For better or worse, this has the knock-on effect of many new people swearing off certain kinks altogether for years because that's an edge play thing and I don't do edge play. But in my opinion, edge play is largely not a static category. It is a subjective label that is based on two things. One, the relative level of risk of a kink, and how much that kink pushes your own edge. And to a lesser extent, community context and perception also plays a role in this. For a room full of people doing ABDL, wearing a diaper probably feels pretty normal, unless the motivation is humiliation, which is far from always being the case. It also isn't that high risk of a kink either, if the physical component is relatively safe, and the mental and emotional experience is mostly positive, and you're in a community space where the activity is normalized, it's not likely to feel very much like edge play then. But if you were to make a room full of Victorian high protocol subs wear diapers while serving a 5-course meal, that'd probably feel pretty freaking edgy to a lot of them. Not because of the risk, but because it's not normalized in that space, and because it probably leads to some intense mental and emotional experiences like embarrassment or shame. This is why it's hard to make judgment calls like this or that kink is always edge play because of how much these factors can vary. And like I said before, it's also highly personal. If you were raised by hippie liberal parents in California who were part of a nudist colony, walking around naked in a dungeon isn't likely to feel very edgy. But if instead you were raised in Utah as a Mormon or part of some other high-control religion with a lot of bodily shame, being naked around other people might be one of the most nerve-wracking things you could do. A person's upbringing, life history, and values will contribute to their sense of what edge play is too. I should say now, because I've been using edgy while talking about edge play, that not everyone agrees with using the terms like that. Some people see a stark difference between mere edginess and edge play. From what I can gather, some folks see edgy as exclusively referring to only things which are personally disquieting or abnormal, and they see edge play as referring to kinks which are higher risk, irrespective of one's own feelings about the kink. Like I said, there is no one clear-cut definition here. I am not the rule maker for kink, and if someone has a different perspective from what I describe in this video, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. Just want to get that out there. I'm not trying to be the be-all, end-all decider of what kinks are. I am just giving what I think is the most complete perspective on what edginess and edge play can be. But it is worth exploring the risk aspect of edge play more, even though I don't think that alone defines what edge play is. For example, something like choking for many is a form of edge play because it is both highly dangerous and mentally intense. Letting someone put their hands around your neck or cover your mouth and nose is a powerful experience. Other kinks that are considered edge play in large part due to their high risk level include things like suspension rope bondage, or rough body play, or wrestling, knife play, anything that draws blood or breaks the skin, and CNC, or consensual non-consent. Most of these are considered dangerous primarily because of their physical risks, but CNC is by itself more of a mental risk. I've seen it ruin more than one relationship, and many people don't realize just how impactful it can be until it's far, far too late. Even in communities where these activities are common, they don't tend to lose their edge play status because these risks can largely not be mitigated away. If there are any kinks that we could say are always edge play, it would probably be these ones, and kinks like them for that reason. The experienced people in my audience may also know that many of these kinks are considered to fall under the precepts of RAC, or risk-aware consensual kink. Another fun way that people like to split hairs in the community is to argue whether RAC is meant to be a personal philosophy or a category for kinks. For my 2 cents, I tend to see it as both a personal philosophy, but you will hear it both ways. But oh, hi dog, hi! Thank you for joining us. Hi, my sweetheart. She heard me slap my leg, and I think she came over to see what was going on. But anyways, you'll hear it both ways. But no matter how you slice it, this begs the question, what's the difference between edge play and RAC? So I do see RAC more as a way of doing kink. As a consent framework, it guides us towards what we should strive for in our play, that everyone involved is adequately informed of the risks, even if those risks cannot be fully mitigated away. That's the risk-aware part. Without being fully, properly informed, one cannot give, according to RAC, meaningful consent. Take a scenario with a newbie submissive who is going to a dungeon for the very first time. They know nothing about kink except what they've seen in movies. A top approaches them and says, "Hey, want to try my whip?" without warning them that it can break the skin. They may be able to enthusiastically say heck yes to that because it's maybe one of their fantasies, but they aren't able to give truly informed consent. This puts both the top and the bottom in a sticky situation, to say the least. Edge play by itself, though, doesn't really say anything about consent or how a kink scene ought to be conducted. Edge play can be done in an ethical, informed way. Edge play can also be done without proper regard for negotiation or for the people involved. Hopefully you can see now what some of the differences between RAC and edge play are. They do overlap. A lot of people will use RAC if they tend to do more edge play, but they are not necessarily the same things. Edge play can be done in a way that's more ethical or not, or more geared towards acting in a safe way or not. It doesn't really say anything about that. Whereas RAC is largely meant as a way of guiding how you do kink, but also that has a lot of flaws, and people will certainly misuse it as a way to shrug off any responsibility and to not really talk about what they contributed to a scene. I see, especially with Rack, a tendency to sort of like assign randomness to things that were not actually particularly random and probably should have been talked about and considered but weren't. And that's probably a topic for another video, but it is there, and that's sort of where I see the difference between these two things. Now, one final thing I want to talk about with edge play is not just our community norms around certain kinks, but also external perceptions of them as well, because I think that also contributes to our understanding of something that is rack or not. So let's go back to choking, because that's very popular, right? And choking, for people who are outside of the kink scene, that is oftentimes seen as risky or as like rough maybe, but not necessarily edgy. It's pretty passe. Like if we have Billboard Hot 100 songs that are referencing choking, like for months on ends, and they're one of the best viewed, best listened to songs on Spotify for months and months, I think we can probably say it's pretty normalized at this point. So edge play within the kink community does not even necessarily correlate with it being popular or not in the vanilla world, because like choking, very popular. It's sometimes seen as risky, but oftentimes not really fully dealt with as being a high-risk activity, whereas in kink, for the most part, we tend to see it as pretty risky, and even like riskier and edgier than somebody who is vanilla would probably see it, which I find to be very interesting. So we can have these outside perceptions, and it might influence how we initially think about something. But as we get into the community, we learn more of those norms that can alter our perception. Like with choking, we might get into the scene and be like, oh, I really want to try it. It seems like fun. And like not really see it as a big deal. But then as we learn more, it becomes edgier and more like edge play in our minds, because that's largely how other people who are kinky see it. Whereas let's take like water sports, for example. That might be unthinkable to a vanilla person and seem like one of the edgiest possible things. But then when you're in certain parts of the community and you're just like, well, you know, I mean, it's really just happening on your legs in the shower, and like there's not really any risk of like communicable disease, and it's not painful, it's like it's gonna break your legs, like what's the big deal? And you might realize over time, oh, this thing actually really isn't that big of a deal. It's not even really that edgy to me because, you know, just personally doesn't relate that way in my brain. And that's a factor too. There's a lot of personal perception that goes into edge play, and what is edgy to one will not be edgy to the other. That's sort of where everything ends up at the end of the day. But I would say, yeah, if we're talking about things that are on average considered to be edge play, usually it's things involving, you know, bodily fluids, vomit, suspension, anything that pierces the skin, anything with blood, anything like that tends to be what we assign as like being edge play or not, though again it is very highly variable. And that's more or less what I wanted to say. I'm trying to work in some shorter videos like this one. It feels weird to me because I'm like, this isn't even gonna be like 20 minutes long. Did I fully answer the question? I hope I did. Thank you all so much for watching. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this one in a comment down below. If you have a different way of seeing edge play, things maybe that you think are edge play I didn't really talk about here. I realize I didn't like quite talk about like how to do edge play or like what to do when you want to play with something edgy, but that more has to do with the specific kink itself, because like how you approach something that's like personally mentally edgy versus something that's like more physically high risk, those are going to be navigated in different ways. They can be similar, but for the most part they're like approached differently from each other. But yeah, that's maybe a separate video we could talk about where we're really outlining different kinks in some more detail. I also have other videos that are like talking about like demystifying some of the top edgier kinks. I'll have those linked down below if you want to watch that. But again, love to hear your thoughts in a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy this and are ready, please do subscribe, because I make videos twice a week about all different kink and BDSM related topics. If you want to support what I do, the best you can do is with Patreon. Link to that will be down below. Thank you all so much for watching me, and thank you so much for supporting me over on Patreon. It really does mean the absolute world to me. And until I see you all next time, I hope you have a great rest of your day and a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.